Thank you. Good morning from my side. My name is Rüdiger Kunzer. I'm with Deutsche Telekom. And I'm happy to be here today giving the keynote. First of all, maybe you're wondering why these guys are using this magenta color originally used by T-Mobile. I will come in a couple of seconds back to that point. Let's shortly talk about what kind of messages I want to transport today. So first of all, I want to give you a little bit of background. What is Deutsche Telekom doing? What's our strategy? What we are doing with open source? Why we are engaged here in the ONF, in the open source community, and what are our expectations and as well our achievements that we achieved of the last 2 years. So I missed the click. Okay. So as I mentioned, I will start a little bit discussing DT's strategy and coming back to that point with the magenta color. I'm not talking about the figures. I think the figures and the facts stand for itself. But I want to share a short story with you that I experienced. So usually I'm coming 2 or 3 times a year towards the US. And after a 9-hour or 12-hour flight, depends where you arrive, you're exhausted, tired, and just want to go to the hotel. And you take a taxi, sit in the back of the taxi, and then the taxi driver is a polite guy or not, depends, and asks some questions. So first question normally is, where do you come from? From Germany. So I'm tired answering only in one-word sentences. And the second question then that comes, are you here for business? Yes, of course, attending a conference. Third question is then, for which company you work for? Deutsche Telekom. Then a couple of seconds break, Deutsche Telekom. And then the question comes, do you have any business in the US? Then I say, of course, T-Mobile US. Oh, T-Mobile is a German company. No, it's not, but it's part of Deutsche Telekom. And this is the little bit the relation, and we are happy that T-Mobile US is part of Deutsche Telekom and part of the Magenta family. So that's a little bit the relation to the Magenta things here on my slides, and and you see it on the bottom of the slide, so it's included in all the figures and numbers. It is. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit serious about our strategy. And I selected this slide from the company strategy presentation. And this is, I think, it's really a cool slide because the message, we are dedicated network investors. I like this a lot because it's a simple message. It's honest, it's truth. And you can see this in our annual reports. We invest quite a lot in networks and in our services, of course. And we are doing much more than this. But this is the key point and the key figure. And this is as well a motivation why we are engaged in the open source community and in standardization, of course. So you see a lot of things here on the slides, and I will focus on the next slides on this topic on the bottom, integrated gigabit networks. So we have to invest a lot. So 5G is around the corner. We roll out a lot of fiber. And what we need is an efficient and sustainable method to invest in our infrastructure and in the equipment. And that means we need something like a challenger or enabler, and that's why we brought up the Access 4 project with the goal to redesign broadband access, leveraging data center concepts. So Hans-Jörg is one of the, or is the chief architect of this project, and the mission is as well there. We develop cost-efficient, lean-to-operate, and scalable access platforms to deliver gigabit networks. And one of the goals is to reduce lifecycle costs and increase feature agility. Means we want to manage the entire life cycle and want to control the life cycle. We are currently, with the existing equipment, not able to do. And reducing OpEx is a key as well. And automation comes automatically because of the degree of freedom that the split of software and hardware gives you at the end. Makes the software much more complexer because of additional features, additional functions, and therefore you need automation to get this process up and running. So let's start first of all with some important cornerstones, because we started with that project in 2016, and thanks to AT&T, that set up us on the right track. Thanks a lot here. And this is what cooperation and collaboration means. So helping each other. And we have a close collaboration with AT&T here in the US, working together in the ONF, having meetings and so on. So the first lab trial started 2016. Last year, we demonstrated a multi-access cord at the Mobile World Congress here in the US. It was in San Francisco, I think, together with Redis. Thanks a lot. And currently we are running a pilot, an early pilot and field trial with Volta and Seba in Germany. So let's look a little bit more in detail what we achieved. But I want to select only 2 points here from this slide, because this slide was presented yesterday and I think, yesterday. The collaboration and community part, I think it's for us really important. We support, we contribute, and we are engaged. And we had a good community meetup this year in June in Germany, in Darmstadt. So with around about 60 people, supply chain partners were there, other European operators were there, and there was a huge interest on that topic. And I think if the ONF wants to scale, this is a proposal from my side, we need something like a branch in Europe to bring other interested operators on board. The other part on the right side is the RFQ that we issued this year, and we selected a co-development partner helping us to bring things forward, to bring things to production. And that's on my next slide. So why we need this kind of co-dev partnership on top of open source, on top of our open source engagement. And if you compare the role model with a classic supplier, there's not much difference. So in the classic way, if a product manager, for example, decides to roll out a new feature or a new service, then normally the account team from the supplier came in. You have a lot of discussions. Then they fly back, call their developers, It will be get a slot in the roadmap, and sometimes somewhere an early solution comes back to you. Then after certain iterations, the feature is implemented. So the CodeF partner is doing similar the same for us with some differences. First of all, the code at the end is an open code that is freely available for us, or we paid for it, so it belongs to Deutsche Telekom then. It's open, it's not a black box thing. But on the other side, is this process faster than the classic process? That's the question. And I think it's not. Because of the complexity, things become more complex. Software becomes more complex. An open source approach makes quite a lot of sense. Sharing the resources, working together on a system, on a solution, on a design is needed in that case to be fast on the market, to be flexible, and to get all the things addressed. So if you decide for co-developer, then you have to be sure that things that they are pushing will be brought back and distributed back into the open source community. I think this slide was shown yesterday as well. We hope that we are ready to produce based on Access 4 around about 2020 in this data center style. And Robert mentioned yesterday that we are trying to solve the problems in the IT manner, not with this telco background and this telco manner. And this is really the important point here, and this shows the picture. And we are focusing on fiber to the home here and deliver the basement for additional services. They come maybe later with different requirements, but we are able to address exactly these requirements on this kind of edge data center. So mobile backhaul, for example, will be an interesting use case. Makes quite a lot of sense. But as well, Manuel had a talk yesterday about the M-Cord. So we see as well possibilities to bring these things in here. So let's talk a little bit about the community work and what are key areas and key engagements here. So DT is not only part of the ONF. So this is really an important community for us, and we are members, partners, or founding members of several other projects. I mentioned here on the slides only a few. So we are members as well of the Linux Networking Foundation Networking Fund. ONAP is there a good example. And we try to collaborate and bring things together, so where possible. So not doing things alone in a certain community or body. If there are relationships and things where we can help each other, then do it together. Rob mentioned this, and we appreciated this quite a lot as well. So we are operators, same as AT&T and Comcast. And this new strategic plan and this new strategic initiatives with the reference designs, with the exemplar platforms, help quite a lot coming from open source towards a solution, towards a product. So these are the first steps, and this is where the community and the operators can focus, can align on, based on these kind of reference designs. So let's have a short look where we are in ONF, what we are doing exactly. So we are focusing, this was mentioned yesterday as well, on Volta, ZBAR with the highest priority. So these are our most relevant things we are pushing here. But we look as well towards use cases that are important for our national companies. For example, the M-Quad thing with a lightweight EPC, where, for example, in Poland, T-Mobile Poland is looking for a special use case of fixed mobile substitution. So we can use this kind of technology as well there, and this makes quite a lot of sense. Coming to my conclusion. Traffic growth was mentioned yesterday by AT&T, by Andre, today by Rob. This is a huge topic for us. But it's not only traffic growth that we have in the network and that we have to address. So on one side is the capabilities that compute power will deliver and still deliver in future. So Moore's law was mentioned by Google. But these things give us the opportunity as well, these degrees of freedom regarding software. So software can do quite a lot of things. In the past, we had this situation, a network is a complex thing. So keeping a huge operator network in a stable situation, it is not an easy task. So with the availability of 5 nines, for example, and all this kind of things. With more compute power, we can maybe tweak a little bit better in future and can do more at the end. So therefore, software is becoming more complex. Situations in the company has to change and address this kind of topics. And investments as well are a huge thing. And this motivates us regarding this complexity to collaborate with other operators, to collaborate in open source and in the community. Yeah. Regarding the standardization strategy of Deutsche Telekom, one point or one sentence, why we are here, for example, in this group, why we are in open source communities. If you look to this broad range of standardization bodies, then you see there are a lot of changes upcoming. So, for example, in IETF, you have agile working groups providing code, working in a really short time frame and delivering things. So standardization is changing quite a lot. So it's not only anymore this kind of ITU style. Because of operators are changing and the time and the technology is changing much faster. So that means we have to address exactly these points, and therefore we have to go in search of agile communities as IETF, as open source, as ONF, as others, providing code instead of specification. And we have with A4 an enabler pioneering this work and bringing the relationship towards our network deployments at the end. I mentioned the CoDev development partner. This is needed to bring things forward, to productize things, to less skills or not the right skills in the company. We need that knowledge from the outside. That's really important. Yeah, and that's what I want to say. I'm come to an end. Thank you very much.
Questions for Rüdiger? Oh.
Glad to see you participating in the open source and ONF specifically. With respect to Poland, which you mentioned, is it Access 4.0 or is it more to do with the EPC? And how do you have standards equated with the 5G releases? What's the relationship between all this in that POC or whatever you're doing at Poland?
So the Poland use case is the lightweight EPC, and it's based on the M-Cord trailblazing activity currently. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A question I had on, given your title on cost cutting, but do you have a goal in mind by shifting to this new architecture? How much cost savings are you looking at? What's your target goal?
Good question.
I'm sorry that I brought it up.
Yeah, so it's easy. So we calculated a cost case for this, let me say, classic approach based on fiber to the home, based on Volta and the OLT, so within the Access 4. This is our basement. This case is working. And this is the enabler and the basement for additional services that we run at the edge on top of this technology.
Well, I mean, do you have a set target? I'm sure when you engage in a project like this, you have a set goal, an expectation. One, well, just share with us, if you can quantify, that would be even better. What your target was, how this architecture is progressing. Are you progressing ahead of your expectations, below? Just kind of give a sense.
So unfortunately, I cannot talk about the figures here. It's not allowed from the communication side, so sorry for that, but the question is a good question. No.
I have a slightly modified version of the question.
Oh my God.
So the question is,
I think
is there any other initiative other than the open source? So do you have a fallback option?
Sure, you have ever fallback option, but as I mentioned, so the complexity, so if you split software and hardware, right. So then you end up in future with quite a lot of complexity on the software side. So there are new features available, new functions. We're talking about later on about machine learning and all this automation stuff. And therefore, it's important as well. I don't remember what was exactly the question. Sorry for that.
The question is, there are a lot of telecom investment in open source, and many people are curious, as you see from the questions, that is there going to be a long-lasting investment? And I've heard all kinds of stories that the amount of open source investment is just for some executives to show some numbers and nothing more than that, and they will not switch so much to open source and those kind of things. So I've been involved in open source for a long time now, and for large-scale infrastructure like OpenStack and many other initiatives, there is really no alternative in non-open source. So my assessment is for all these integration frameworks, you don't have a choice, but I would like to hear from telecom operators like you, what's your vision on the investment, and if there's going to be a firm, or you're going to switch back to customized solutions at later point. So that's the broad question.
Yeah. So there's for sure fallback option ever. But we push quite a lot, and we believe in that kind of activity. And therefore, we have a lot of people working in A4, bringing these things forward. We are engaged in the community with around about 10 people here in the ONF, coding and bringing things forward. And I absolutely understand that question, and the hurdle is really high. It's on both sides. On the supplier side, it's high, and on the operator side as well, because we are in saturated markets, at least in Europe and here in the US. So it's high for a new player, for example. It's high as well for new suppliers and attackers on the other side. And but if you compare this with the automotive industry, for example, Tesla, yeah. So how many people believed in this kind of business model that this guys brought up a couple of years ago? So I think not many. And there is an opportunity to go forward in that direction, I believe. But as same as with Tesla, so the hurdle is quite high and needs quite a lot of investment.
Okay. Oh, no, sure. Maybe last question, and then we can move on.
So if you cannot save money, can at least show us ways that how you can make money? Do you have like a new service in mind that you could share with us?
For sure, you save money if you share resources on the development side with end parties. Then for sure you save money. I explicitly believe in that.
But I guess the question he's trying to ask is that with this particular A4, you are also, I suppose, expecting to be able to roll out new services. And with those new services, maybe you are expecting to make more money as well on the top line, on the revenue side.
Good question. We will see.
Okay. Okay, so I think with that, maybe again,
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Okay.